my master's project at the University of Illinois, I evaluated the use of Rumensin during the dry period. And I put here controlled energy diets because you don't, in our case, we use straw. You don't really need to use straw. You can use a low quality forage to add that effective fiber or dilute your high quality forages. Either way, having that extra fiber in the rumen is really helpful. You probably all of you guys already heard what Rumensin is and you use it in your diets. But Rumensin basically is a naturally occurring antibiotic. Comes from the bacteria Streptococcus cynominensis, I think it is. Anyway, what it does is that it controls the transfer of ions in the cell, and what it does is that it controls the growth of gram-positive bacteria, therefore allowing the gram-negative to grow larger. Therefore, the balance of the bugs in the rumen are more efficient, I would say, to the common diets in the Northwest. A little story on Rumensin. Well, it was used, ionophores were used in 1977, and then Rumensin was approved by the FDA in 2002 to be fed to dairy cattle. And then it was 2004, they could legally say that it helps in milk yield and efficiency. And in 2005, it was officially used for dry cows and dairy cows. And they can vary from 11 grams to 22 grams per ton max, or 185 to 660 in dairy cows, or 115 to 410 in dry cows. So then we go to what controlled energy diets are. Well, why do we need controlled energy diets? The thing is that when you're thinking about the dry period, you have your far off, which usually is a straw diet, and then you have your close-up or your steam-up. Usually those diets are high in energy. When cows are using higher, let's say that. So since they're eating the same amount of dry matter, but it has more energy, then the cow is really probable for that they will use this energy and grow fatter, and with just excess energy. So that's when we start thinking about controlled energy diets. And the thing is that once a cow gets fat, and that fat starts depositing around her body, around her intestines and everything, it affects the dry matter intake. It affects the transition period, basically, because it's highly probable that she was going to have problems freshening and the fat mobilization and all that stuff that I'm not going to bore you with. But eventually, if you have too much fat being moved around in the body, all of this fat cells can deposit into the liver and create fatty liver, or ketosis, and we all know what that does to our cows. Controlled energy diets, I believe that it was started by Dr. James Drake. Some of his students think of it as the Goldilocks diet, just because the color of the straw. That's why I call him Goldilocks. But the purpose of it is to dilute, like I said earlier, that nutrient content of the diet and be more effective with the use of nutrients, creating a healthier cow and also avoiding problems. So what do we do to get a controlled energy diet? Well, we can use poor quality forages, and that's why I put it in quotation marks, because we're not talking about feed that no other cow is going to eat. No, like Dave was talking, it's maybe you have some hay that has a really high, low feeding value. You can use that. So if you use the best, what you want to feed to your heifers, you can feed it to your cows, just to monitor that intake. Another way that you can control the energy in the diets is by limit feeding. And this is when you know the dry matter intakes of the cows, but you don't want to offer them so much for them to eat a lot. So what you do is that you feed them enough. But when I say enough, it's not that they're going to run out of feed 6 hours after you feed them. If you're going to feed them within 24 hours, there be no feed around 21, 22 hours, just a couple of hours without feed. That's the main point of limit feeding. And then we go to high fiber, low energy diets, and that's what we used for our research, in which diets were diluted with straw, and they were fed free choice, and for the purpose of avoiding over intake of energy. My project was titled Effects of Rumensin in High Straw, Low Energy Diets, and it was done with University of Illinois and Elanco, and that's the number of the study. So, as we've been talking, the objectives of this research was to determine how rumensin fed during the dry period affect the cow during production while using a one dry period ration, high fiber, during those 60 days, or using a far off high fiber and using a high energy, moderate or steam up diet during the close-up. And with this, we're going to monitor milk performance and health. And there was actually two parts of this trial. I'm only going to tell you guys really quick about the results of the first one, which was performance. And the second part was that we had a rumen cannulated cows, and we actually measured the length of the papillae, the production of the fatty, of the VFAs. Later on, I think John, this came out published from Elanco, and we do have a report from it where you guys can later on look at it and look at it in more detail of what really happened. So what we did is that we had this bunch of cows and we split them in four groups. And the thing is, as they were coming in, we were splitting them, rather than having the cow selecting the best cows and putting them in one treatment. So we just randomized everything just to make everything fair. And like I said, we used those two treatments, one whole dry period versus the 2 dry period, with or without rumensin. That gives us 4 treatments. And after the cow calved, she was fed, they were all fed the same ration with 14 grams of rumensin per ton. So, from the results, this is the effects of the prepartum diet on parity and postpartum dry matter intake. So, we have CEHF, just to make it easy, that's the straw, controlled energy high fiber, and this is the close-up. We can see that the cows ate more than heifers, which is logical. But what I wanted to show you guys is that whenever you look at a p-value, anything that's less than 0.05, it's significant. If it's more, if it's between 0.05 and 0.1, the closer it is to 0.05, that means that there's a tendency that that is true. Obviously, in parity, there was a significant difference. Knowing that, then we have the effects of rumensin on dry matter intake. We have the same effect. Cows ate more than heifers. Like I said earlier, there's only significant difference between parity. So now we're going to get to a couple of tables. You do not have to read all of it. It's just that this is Elanco information, and I'm only allowed to show, I can't modify a slide because, like Chad always says, it is what it is. So we have our diets, a straw diet, and our close-up diet. Then we have rumensin, 0 grams per ton and 22 grams per ton. We have dry matter intake, energy intake, which is related to the dry matter, their body weight, and their body condition score. The standard error, which basically tells you the range of where the data fell. But what I want you guys to look at is at the p-value. Like I said, anything less than 0.05 is significant. So we have that there's no values less than 0.05 in this table. Therefore, what that's saying is that there's no difference between dry matter intake, energy intake, body weight, and the body condition score of these animals. So we can say that if we're going to compare the values apples to apples, it's the same thing. With the effects of the diet and Rumensin on prepartum dry matter intake and energy, body weight, and body condition score. So what we're talking about here is the far-off period and the close-up period. And again, we have the same headings, but we're going to look at the p-value. We have that during the close-up period, there was a significant difference in diet between the straw and the close-up. The close-up being higher. Having that energy, having that sweetness, having that starch available, the cows ate more. And like I said, just because of the higher energy, the cow was eating more energy. So we could expect also that the energy intake was the same. But there was no difference in body weight and body condition score. Then we have the effects after the cows calved and they all got into the same diet. We measured components and body condition score of the cow and dry matter intake. But what I think is, I try to pull the most important part of the research and what is important for you guys, milk components and milk yield. So we have, with the milk, pounds per day was only significant when using Rumensin. So with 0 grams of Rumensin during the dry period, these cows yielded an average 90.2 pounds per day. With Rumensin, it's 95.9. We're talking about almost 6 pounds of difference by using Rumensin during the dry period. A lot of people, well, even Elanco has published that Rumensin can suppress fat. In this case, in this trial, Rumensin did not affect significantly the fat content of the milk, but the diet did. The close-up ration had significant difference compared to the straw diet. Therefore, we can say that feeding a close-up increases your fat content, the milk fat content. And in regards to lactose, there's difference between the diet and the use of Rumensin. Close-up diet has slightly more lactose, and using Rumensin gave you more lactose also. That's percentages of their components. So what we decided is that we actually did that in pounds. So we could actually compare it not just as thinking of pounds of milk and percentage, but actually how many pounds of fat and how many pounds of protein these animals produced. There was no difference within diets. So either you feed a straw diet or a close-up diet, it is the same. But then when you use Rumensin, there's a tendency that using Rumensin during the close-up period, more milk was produced. There was more lactose with the use of Rumensin. There were more total solids, solid corrected milk, 3.5 fat corrected milk, and 4.0 fat corrected milk. So just by looking at this diet, at this table, we can see that because there was a tendency of milk production, but we don't have that difference in the percentage, that difference in milk actually gave you that much more pounds of fat and protein. And that's when Rumensin ended up being superior than not using Rumensin during the dry period. And as we can see here, this is a table of the data that we just saw. This is the cows with rumensin during the dry period compared to the cows, the blue stars, without rumensin. We can definitely see that there was a numerical difference. And the only way that we could have actually say that it is significant difference would have been by using more cows. And we used over 180 cows. And with university resources, I think that was a pretty big trial. And I think that you can validate this data. Now we have the milk fat. This is more of a visual. I couldn't tell you what happened here, but we have that the milk fat per pound per day, not percentage. So we have that percent times that increase in milk yield gave you that much more fat in the in the cows as it did in the heifers. And like Mike was pointing out, there's a difference also in the heifers. So conclusions is that supplementing with rumensin during the dry period did not affect milk production efficiency. And supplementing with rumensin during the dry period increased the yield of the solids corrected milk, milk fat, milk lactose, and total solids. And like I said, it tended to increase the milk yield. And the effects of rumensin, either used in a one diet dry period versus a two-stage, there was no difference there either. And again, just thinking out loud, if you can get straw at a cheaper value and you compare it to the steam-up diet with all those high-quality, high-energy feed, definitely the straw is going to be a cheaper option. And with the data out of this research, you can use it. And also, just to point out something on straw, is that you're adding disaffected fiber. When you add disaffected fiber into your diet, it reduces the rate of passage. And by reducing that rate of passage, it increases nutrient digestion. So even though some people might think of it as a low-quality feed, it is good for the cow for rumen health. And if you have happy cows, you have good health. Those cows, like I think it was Thomas was saying, that if you treat them good, they'll treat you good back. And using straw and avoiding those, you avoid metabolic problems and digestive problems by adding that effective fiber. During the close-up, we did not feed exactly the same thing as the far-up. We corrected for decay to avoid any transition problems in regards to that. And because of that, cows fed the two-diet system had lower NEFAs before calving, but had higher NEFAs after calving. Therefore, their NEFA was normal before they calved, but once they calved, all of this fat mobilization started going on, and that NEFA increased in their blood. So in summary, using rumensin during the dry period works. And comparing one diet dry period versus a two, there's no difference there.